All right, everybody, welcome back to another mini podcast. And the marathon marketing moment rises again. I'm Skip Cohen, and my co host is Marathon's Mark Weber.
Hello.
And hey, between the two of us, we've got this long combined history in the industry. And the feeling is kind of let's help you learn from our mistakes or some of the mistakes we've seen made so you can make new ones all on your own. So, as I've said in previous podcasts, Mark's background is more on the professional side as a photographer with a long list of awards and years combined in the industry, and along with customer service at Marathon. And I've always been in love with the business and marketing side of imaging. And for both of us, it's just been a remarkable journey in an industry that we love dearly. Now, our last episode, we talked about branding. And as we wrapped up the episode, it occurred to both of us that one of the things that we really didn't get into is once you've developed and you're working to develop that brand, how do you keep the message out there? How do you get people in the community to know who you are? I mean, seriously, what good is creating the greatest images of your life if nobody knows who you are? You know, it's kind of like playing to a dead audience.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's what we're going to hit on today. We're going to talk about expanding your reach and all the things you can do. So, hey, buddy,
Hey,
welcome back.
how's it
How you
going?
doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah. I This is an exciting topic as they all are. You and I just we've lived parallel lives, so it's like we're twin brothers from different mothers, and it's fun to, share all these things that we've learned along the way to be able to pass on. And you know the importance of using the right words is so critical, and not everybody's a writer or knows how to do some of that, and there is help out there that you can get from that. But a lot of times I find that if you just take a little bit of time and start thinking about, if you were your own customer, what is it you'd want to know about what you do and what you provide, and how do you build that trust? It all starts there.
Yeah, in fact, let's hit on something that you and I were talking about just a little while ago. Let's talk about what happens when your phone rings. I
Oh,
can't begin to tell you how frustrating it is when I'm calling a photographer and I think I've got a business studio number and I hear everything from the dog barking to kids crying in the background. And this is where it's that old line. It was the band deodorant commercial about you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
hmm.
Now, for me, if I'm calling somebody, I get it. I'm not likely calling to hire them. But when your phone rings and it's a client calling and a potential bride or business owner interested in hiring you, or it's a real estate, let's say you're doing drone photography or real estate interior exteriors, they want to know it's that professional. And there are two parts to this. One is how you answer the phone. The second part is when you're not there, how quickly you get back to follow up. What do you
Yeah,
think?
boy, you said it. In fact, one of my passions is, and I do this when I travel, I find out, like, if I'm going to Minneapolis, I'll pick up the phone and I will call and pretend to be a customer looking for a photographer. And I always do this because I like to hear, like you said, if I'm calling from Marathon about an order, people answer the phone differently. But if you're calling from your cell phone, from wherever, and you contact a local photographer, I've been impressed with some, and I've been just blown away with, oh my gosh, they need so much help and they don't realize it a lot of times. And somewhere along the lines, once I'm getting into um, the call, I identify myself and who I am and why I was calling, and compliment them if they've done a great job. And if it's someone who maybe isn't quite so good, I just say, "Oh, I'll get back to you." So if you've ever received a call like that, that's who it was. It was me. But I do that because I really want an understanding of what's out there today, what is happening, because um, this is the truth. This is what's going on. And when somebody calls you on the phone, oftentimes the first question you get is, how much is an 8 by 10? And the reason you get that is because they don't know what else to ask. essentially what they're saying is, tell me about your business. And so you have to be prepared. I don't want to say with a script, but it doesn't hurt to script this stuff out to begin with so that you kind of eventually fall into a natural rhythm of your discussion. So once you get beyond the how much is an 8 by 10, and of course you let them know you're going to answer their pricing questions, but first you want to find out a little bit more about them, which leads you into, have you been to a professional photographer before? And that question alone identifies whether or not they have an understanding of what a professional photography experience is about. Now, did they have a good experience or a bad experience? And so when that's where that conversation leads, is you can say, well, tell me about your experience. And if they say, what happened, then you can, find out a little bit more and expand on that conversation. If they've never been to a professional photographer before, that leads you into the ability to say, um, let me explain what we do. We do things a little bit differently here. But the number one question you should ask, even before you get any further into a call, is to say or to ask, how did you hear about the studio? Because that tells you where your marketing is paying off. Is it a referral? Did they see you at a display? Was it a network situation where a business referred you? That's how you track your marketing. And then you want to keep track of how many calls you got that week and what were they referred by, who were they, how did they hear about you? And then sometimes people aren't ready to book you right then and there, but hopefully along the line, as you've been taking your or making your discuss or having your discussion, you've been making notes so that you have that ability to follow up. I can't tell you how many times I booked a family because somebody called, inquired about a session, weren't quite ready to book because they were calling around, and so I would get their phone number and just say, do you mind if I follow up in a couple of days with you? And I did. And I booked, I had a 80% average on booking when I would do that because, first of all, nobody else was doing that in our community. And number two, you have that ability to resell them when you have that offer to follow up and you do follow through. That means, you know what, this person can be trusted. They really want to do photograph our family, and they have a passion for it.
Well, you hit on a great uh, demo example that I want to give everybody that is borrowed from our mutual good buddy Doug Box. And I heard Doug do it years ago. I've done it repeatedly in marketing programs and workshops that I've taught. Let's assume that you're a baker, and he'll ask the whole audience, pretend you're a baker and you just got a call that says how much are your cakes. The questions you're going to ask to qualify, and this is a little off the topic of branding, but it's still so relevant. The questions you're going to ask owning a bakery are going to be, well, how big a cake? Do you want an ice cream cake? Are there any peanut allergies? Is there going to be something inscribed on the top? Is it something, how soon will you need it? How many people are you going to be serving? There's so many questions you'll ask, and yet nobody in the audience ever owns a bakery. And yet, when a photographer calls and says how much your 8 by 10, some knucklehead out there says, 22.95, and walks away from it. And the point is, I mean, if we've learned nothing else from McDonald's over the years, you got to ask, do you want fries with that? You've got to qualify your audience and find out more. Is it a special occasion? Do I need to deliver it, or are you going to pick it up? And you have the same ability as photographers saying, well, we have 8 by 10s, but do you know that we also have a package price? Is there going to be any retouching that's going to be done? Do you know that we have a service to revitalize all those old prints of yours? How many copies you're going to need? Are you going to need any wallet size as well? Is there somebody coming in from out of town? Do you know that we have a special this week on our sitting fees? I mean, there's so many. Is it black and white or color? Do you want it printed on something special? I mean, when I look at what Marathon offers with Bella Fine Art prints, the stuff is stunning. Do you want your images in an album? There, so you can give the customer so much more to think about, not overload them, but just let them know that, this is like walking into a car dealership and saying how much your cars. Well, I don't know. What do you want? You want an SUV? You want a two
Yeah.
seater? Uh, and it goes so much deeper than that. But then as you were talking now, there were other things that got me thinking about when people get a phone call. And there's so many of you out there that have these template email response forms on your website, which would be fine. But I can't tell you how many times I've tried to contact a photographer and I don't get a call back. I don't ever hear anything. I filled out that little form and it goes into the black hole and it just disappears. So if you're going to do a template on your website, first of all, I always tell people there's no such thing as too much information. I get if you're a part-time photographer and you don't want to give them your home address because you're working out of your home, but give them a phone number to call, give them an email address. And if you're going to use that form is only as good as your response time. If it's going to take you a day or two to get back to a bride that just contacted you, forget it. Your competitor's going to scoop the wedding before you even get on the phone.
Yeah. And if you can too, I always equate everything to a Disney experience. When you go to Disney World or Disneyland, everything, I mean, everything is absolutely amazing. And so it starts with that conversation and that call with you. And if you can, lead them into an invitation to do a clothing consultation or to meet with you at the studio so that you can show them your work, explain, how you're different. And that's the other thing. Have a unique selling proposition. How are you different and why should they choose you? And that's something you need to have down cold because in the absence of uniqueness, people shop by price. And so you have to be prepared in that conversation to explain why you're different and why you're better and go forward because you can have the best photography but the consumer doesn't understand always that what good photography is. Of course, your work is going to either appeal to people or they're not, but bottom line, it's you that's selling them coming to you and purchasing from you.
Well, you mentioned Disney a second ago, and that reminds me of something I heard Tony Corbell talk about once. When you're at Disney and you ask any Disney employee, what do they call them? They don't call them employees. They're Disney characters, whatever. It's all part of the staff. The
Yeah.
guy pushing the broom on Main Street, just doing some cleanup. If you say to him, "When is the electric light parade?" They'll say 9 o'clock. Oh, and by the way, a great place to see it is right over there in the corner. They never just answer your question. They
Yes.
always take it one step further and give back more. Which leads me into another thing. Since we're talking about how do you get the word out and how do you get people to know about you, let me hit some examples and feel free to jump in and add to that. I know that Helen Yancey started showing her work, and if you don't know Helen, just go Google Helen Yancey. She's past president of PPA. She's a phenomenal, uh, primarily watercolor painter artist, but she's just wonderful. One of my favorite people in the world.
Yes.
She started out showing stuff in a coffee shop in town. Now we're going back a lot of years ago, but she decorated the coffee shop with her images. I remember Bambi Cantrell having a whole series of images up on the wall of a Starbucks when she lived in Walnut Creek in California. And that was another way to get your images out there. Then there's one favorite that I've been putting out there for years. Think about your pediatrician and what's in the office. The last class that any doctor takes is how to decorate your studio on just $10 at a discount store. So you've got mom coming in. Primarily, it's mom that's bringing the kid into the doctors. It isn't very often that it's dad, although that may have changed a little bit through the pandemic. But for the most part, it's mom. She's got nothing to read there, with the exception of a 10-year-old outdated copy of Popular Mechanics, if that's even still made. There's not a lot in the way of good magazines, and she's sitting there. What a great way to play Subliminal Man, like the old Saturday Night Live routine. and have some of your prints on the wall of the doctor's office.
Yeah.
And then over in the corner, in exchange for decorating that waiting area, you're just going to have a stack of business cards that you're going to ask them if it's okay to leave. Or maybe you've got a mini brochure, or you've got one of those accordion style business cards like you were talking about on a previous podcast from Marathon.
Isn't it amazing what happens when you just network a little bit?
Yeah, there it is, networking. And speaking of networking, this is courtesy of Scott Bourne. Own your zip code. You want people to know who you are in your community? Draw a circle around where you are and literally go knock on the doors of every business in the community. And I always get like a wedding photographer that'll say, "Yeah, what good is it going to do going to a real estate office when I'm a wedding photographer?" Well, you're going to walk in and you're going to say, "Hey, just want to meet you. My specialty is wedding photography, but I have to tell you, I've got a great network of buddies. And if you're ever stuck or you need any help on anything photographic, give me a shout. I'm here to help." Now, you don't know if they've got a daughter that's going to be getting married or a son that's going to be getting married, or maybe they really are going to call you because they need some drone photography of a piece of property they're trying to sell, and you're not a drone photographer, but you've built a relationship out with other photographers in the community that complement your week suits.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I just got on a roll. You didn't get a word in edgewise.
I didn't need to. You said everything I would have said.
Well, there you
That's
go.
the hardest part for photographers is they tend to be introverts. And that is a common challenge because for some people it's hard for them to get out and do some of that. But what a difference it makes when you put even just a little bit of effort into that, because I guarantee you the competition around you doesn't. And that's all the difference. It's like you mentioned previously, get involved in your community. That is the number one thing I find with successful studio owners is they are involved in their community. They have connections and that builds that referral because let's face it, the referral process is the number one way that photographers get business. And that's where you have to have your marketing support materials to help keep selling you that you can be prepared to give somebody. But bottom line, it's all about being involved in your community.
Well, you just hit on a magic word. This reminds me of when a bunch of people get together and somebody tells one joke while sitting at the bar, and it suddenly triggers at least one or two other people, and the next thing you know, you've got a joke-a-thon going on for 2 hours. When you said referrals, um, here's a great idea from Bob and Dawn Davis in Chicago. Bob is a wedding photographer, but when he's shooting a wedding, he will also photograph everything from the cake to what the caterer's done to the flowers. And when he gets back, he and Dawn will put together images that they will send to the other companies that were at the wedding, as well as, like, for example, the caterer, the band, the limo company, the florist, and they will send images to them, and they'll just tag it and say, "Hey, use these with our blessing."
Yeah.
Now you're building a network. You're looking for referrals. Clay Blackmore has got a great story about a caterer who years ago said to him, "Hey, when you're photographing that wedding, I can't be there, but could you get me, 30 seconds, a minute of video that just um, shows the buffet and everything that my guys did?" Well, Clay took it a step further and did a 2 to 3 minute video, put it to music, sent it to the caterer. That caterer has become his number one referrer, I guess would be the right word,
Hmm.
for future clients. So you're talking about getting the word out. Community involvement is one, and then the interaction with all the other vendors that you work with at various events. Don't be
Yes.
stingy in sharing images, and go back to the venues.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
And be sure and put your name on the, front of that so that people, when they do look at those images, know where it came from, even though you're gifting it
yeah,
to whether it be the hotel, the band, you name it. And, let's face it, when you're at a wedding reception and you've got, there's time in between things, it gives you that ability to do some of those things to fill in some time gaps anyway.
yep. And there's one more. We're kind of we always do this. We start getting going on this, and then we start to run out of time.
Yeah.
We're kind of out of time, but if you're good, I want to hit on one. Let's call it a big caution to
Yeah.
remind everybody.
Mhm.
Social media is another fantastic way. And when I'm talking social media, I'm talking about primarily Facebook, Instagram. I'm not a big fan of TikTok, but that's because I'm old now. I don't, I don't get it. Uh, but when you're talking about what you share online, number one, be careful what you write. We had a situation in the Wedding Photographers Forum a few years back that's got 35, 36,000 members, and a competitor of a particular photographer took a post that somebody or comment another photographer had made that could be interpreted as negative. It wasn't really, but taken out of context, it was, and actually sent it to that bride. Be careful what you share. You don't know who's in the forum. Everybody wants to be very trustworthy, and that's wonderful. But sadly, we live in a world that isn't always going the way we want it to go. So be careful what you share. And the other thing is, never get into a battle with a troll
Yeah.
in any public forum. You will never win. Trolls hide behind the anonymity of their computer screen, and they like nothing more than to know that they wrecked your day.
Yeah.
So
Good,
just ignore it.
good
And the
advice.
yeah, and when you do ignore it, what you typically find is that other friends will come to your defense.
Hmm.
So that's it, just two advices because we haven't gotten into all the things that you can do in social media. Most of you know them already, and most of you are active in different things. Um, which takes me one more piece. When you talk about social media, I love Facebook for tracking birthdays, anniversaries. If I was a professional photographer, I'd have every one of my clients' Facebook pages listed, and I'd be going in there every single morning, just like I do in our industry now, just to see who's got a birthday today, who's got an anniversary today.
Yeah.
This is about relationship building, and it's another way that you can help get the word out for your brand.
Yeah. Take it one step further and keep all that on your files. Anniversaries, birthdays, a lot of those things are revealed when you're doing a session. You find out, what do you got coming up? Next month. Oh, it's our anniversary. We're traveling, or it's Jimmy's birthday, or, sometimes that's the reason why they're having the portrait made. But that gives you the ability to follow up or send a card.
It's great. By the way, speaking of sending cards, there's another one. Getting a handwritten thank you note is better than ever before because it's something that nobody does anymore. And I know I always remember and always appreciate when somebody has sent me a note. But in addition to your thank you note, make it an image that you went to Marathon and make it a card that uses one of your own images. Stop buying a box of thank you notes at CVS or any stationery shop. You've all got the skill set to be able to have one of your best images on the front of what is going to become a thank you note that you can send out, and they go to clients, they go to vendors that you've met at trade shows who gave you some time. It's one way to just continue to be, as Spanky from the Little Rascals used to say, remarkable. There you
But
go.
I see a lot of those come through here. A lot of them are, branded with their studio logo on the front and it's blank on the inside. So they can use it as a thank you,
Perfect.
a referral, invitation, a VIP invitation. They can put gift cards in there or certificates. So anything handwritten, especially after you get your session, after you're through a session, if you're not sending a thank you note at that time to say something like, Mary, I can't wait to see the images of the family. They are going to be so fun, especially the ones with the pets. You send that. Then, of course, you have your sales, and then you thank them for the sales. And hopefully, you're asking for referrals at that point, too. So, it's just the little things that you do that make such a big difference in your business.
Well, you just hit on one more, and then we got to wrap it up.
Mhm.
David Zeiser used to go to his brides on their first anniversary and say, "Hey, I can't believe a year's gone by. I want to come out and do a portrait of you and your husband. Maybe at this point they've got a new baby. I want to do a family portrait. Now, think about the power of a bride who just got married a year before, who hears from a photographer a year later, and what she's now going to say to all of her friends, because the younger the bride, the more friends she's got that are also going to be getting married. And now they were ecstatic. Oh my God, my photographer David called me. He's going to do a portrait session for us. And all of a sudden, you're back in there and you're making the most out of your best clients to be your ambassadors. See, this goes on. This is like jokes in a bar, and it just
Yeah.
goes back and forth. Hey, let's wrap it up. Where does
Okay.
everybody go to find Mark Weber?
Mark W at marathonpress.net or 800-228-0629, extension 283.
And everybody, you'll find me writing everything at skipconeuniversity.com and a lot of the lead-ins for the blogs on Marathon. My email is skip at mei500.com, and I'm also Skip Cone on Facebook and Skip Cone on Twitter. Nothing exciting there. And we want to thank everybody for being with us today. And tell your friends and let us know if there's a topic you want us to go into detail with. If Mark and I don't have the experience, we sure know somebody who does. And we can always expand this podcast so that you're looking at 2022 and future years as being the very best in business.